Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the College Admissions Counseling Live program from the Princeton Review. I'm Julia Moody, and today my partner Emily Wywick and I will be doing a college admissions update. We'll be presenting the latest breaking news in the college world for the class of 2020 as well as 2021 and younger. So today I'll give you a little bit of my background. I've been a college counselor at the Princeton Review since we started our program. I have about 15 years experience working in high schools in Los Angeles as a college counselor, admissions at MIT, which was an amazing job. And I continue to work on a pro bono basis with families who need help with financial aid. My background, I went to Cornell as an undergrad from balmy Honolulu and traveled cross country to Siberia, basically, but loved it. When I decided I wanted to go into college counseling, I got my certificate at UCLA, and then I went to grad school later in life and got my master's in higher education at Harvard, which was, I think, one of the most difficult things I've ever done, but also incredibly rewarding. And why college counseling? People think I'm crazy, but I love teenagers. I love working with you all. I have raised two of my own, and I think working with teenagers and families and helping guide you onto this adventure of college is just the most rewarding thing possible. So I'm going to start with a quick agenda. So we're starting today with updates for the graduating class of 2020. Don't log off if you're not graduating because we have a ton of information for all of you. Then we're going to go into the current status of testing and its impact on admissions. And testing is changing literally by the minute. We had to update this presentation earlier because the June SAT was canceled. So we'll talk about testing, and then we'll cover extracurricular and summer plans, which seem like they may have disappeared, but they don't have to. And then the resources that are listed, they're listed in the slides, but they will also be listed in the comments on the YouTube page. So we don't actually have resources in this presentation, but please look in the YouTube comments for all of the resources that are referenced in the slides. So let's go. Updates for the class of 2020. I know a lot of you are very, very nervous. There's a lot up in the air. You're home. You may have had your graduation canceled, which I'm very, very sorry and sad that you did. But let's talk about how the college commitment process is different this year. Typically, National College Decision Day is May 1st. And what that means is you have to declare the school that you are going to attend online to the school via a commitment and typically put down a deposit. And this is a day that you tell the school. You can tell them earlier if you want to, but May 1st is the deadline to say, yes, I am accepting your offer of admission and I'm going to be attending your school. And then you tell the other schools, ideally, no, I'm not going to be joining you unless you're on a wait list, in which case you typically stay there. This year, due to COVID-19 and due to the testing situation and due to a lot of people's financial situation, many schools are pushing this date to June 1st or later. But here is the deal. Not all schools are pushing the date. We have a list of updated, we have a link that will include the list of updated schools as they go, as they change. So please check back. But at this point, I would say assume May 1st, but constantly check your email, your accepted student portal, and look on your school's website for updates to see if they push it back to June 1st. Again, due to COVID-19 and financial repercussions to so many families, some schools are also reducing the deposit amount. So we will have this link in the YouTube comments, and this is a critical link for you all to check. And just so you know, feel free to type questions in. We'll stop after each section and answer your questions. So after this class of 2020 update, we'll answer questions. College tours and freshman orientation. So as you know, most campuses are closed and tours are canceled. We know that a lot of students waited until they were accepted to a school, assuming that they would then go on a tour, and that would help them make the decision. Now that's not happening because the schools are closed. To replace this, many schools are offering really in-depth virtual tours and some information sessions, to replace in-person visits, because they realize that you can't travel to see them, and it's critical to them to educate you about their school, and it's critical to you to see the school as much as possible. So check on the school's websites. Many of them also have YouTube channels with virtual tours. There is also a cross-section of sites online that provide virtual tours to see campuses. So, and the Princeton Review also has Rob Franick, our editor-in-chief. He also does some tours of fantastic campuses. So there are many, many resources to see schools. Unfortunately, you can't go there in person. Freshman orientation. So there's a lot in flux, as we know, and a lot up in the air. And freshman orientation, which is typically the week prior to the fall session starting, may or may not happen this year. And that's something, again, keep on top of your email, check your school's email, and your admitted students portal is critical, because that's where all of the late breaking news will be. So please, you're going to hear me say this a lot through the session. Please stay on top of the school that you've accepted and the schools that have accepted you, to learn where they are and what's been changing, if anything. Financial aid issues. So as we know, a lot of families have been impacted by this pandemic, and many families that didn't need aid may need it now, and many families that were okay with the aid that they initially received now need more because of family financial situations. So this is critical, and this is something you need to do now. If your financial aid package is no longer sufficient due to COVID-19 and loss of family income, contact your school's financial aid office immediately. They may not be answering the phone. If not, contact them via email. Explain your situation. These are called extenuating circumstances. Explain your situation and tell them that as much as you would love to attend the school, the aid package is no longer sufficient. And this is unusual this year. If your family did not apply for aid when you went through the college process, but now your situation has changed, again, reach out to the financial aid office and explain the change in circumstances. Trust me, schools are going to be understanding. I'm not guaranteeing that they'll give you more money, but this is worth asking. And we realize how many people's lives have completely been turned upside down by this pandemic. So before committing to a school on that potential May 1st or June 1st deadline, this is something you should sit down and discuss as a family. Look at the finances. What's the school that may have been your first choice may no longer be affordable. So you may have to revise your options and look at the schools that offer you the best aid. So this is a decision that should be made as a family, and students, please don't go online and commit to a school without having a major family discussion. And the potential change in financial aid or award of financial aid could change your first choice college, because if one school gives you more money than another and you need it, it may shift. So, international students. Okay, we know many of you who are international are experiencing challenges beyond belief, and including some travel restrictions and travel issues between your country and the US. We have the CDC site listed here, and it's constantly updating the situation for travelers. And one of the things to do is you need to also discuss your family's financial status, because as we know, financial aid, potential financial aid and finances are very different for international students who are coming to the US for school. So look at the requirements from your schools. If you have aid, look at the aid package. And as I stated earlier, evaluate whether or not your family can still afford this school. And reach out, let the school know that you may need more aid, or you may need aid if you didn't apply for it, as with domestic students. But always have a backup plan. Have a backup plan in case there's a travel ban from your country and you can't make it to school on time. Have a backup plan in case you can no longer afford the school and need to defer for a year. And have a backup plan in case you need to come to the US and stay in quarantine for 2 weeks. So we're talking about many potential options. And as we say, they're all up in the air right now. The only way that you can keep track of this is checking on every website that we're listing and communicating with your colleges. So Emily is going to answer or read me the questions you've asked about the updates for the class of 2020, and I will answer anything that I can.
Thanks so much, Julia. We've only had one question come in so far regarding this section. So Sherry asked, if you apply somewhere ED, early decision, while expecting financial aid to cover part of that decision, but then it doesn't, are you still obligated to go to that school?
The answer is technically no, because financial aid is the only way that you can break a binding early decision contract. However, my caveat is you can't change your mind just because you don't have enough financial aid. You have to go through every possible process with the school to adjust your aid package before being released from early decision. You can't just change your mind because you've changed your mind. So you have to really make sure you do your due diligence in communicating with the financial aid office of the school and then with admissions, because breaking an ED contract is a major deal.
Thanks, Julia. That's the only question right now that we have submitted for the topics that we've covered. We've got some for future topics we're going to cover, so I'll let you move on into the next section.
I must have been so thorough for the class of 2021. Okay, so let's go into, I hear a big sigh out there, the current status of testing and its impact on admissions. And I have to say, I am so sorry for all of you who have been struggling with this nonstop test change. So the SAT, as you already knew, the April and the May tests were canceled. As of yesterday or the day before, the June SAT was also canceled. International testing has been canceled through July. And what the SAT is saying now is that they're proposing administering one test a month starting in August. So there's already a test scheduled in late August. They'll add a September test. There's already an October test, November and December. So you will have options to take August, September, October, November, and or December. Obviously not all of those, but they're adding more tests to the schedule, and they may even add more than that. Again, this is proposed because with the pandemic, we're not quite sure where we'll be in August or September. Unfortunately, the PSAT for sophomores and 8th and 9th graders was also canceled. So for an update, please, again, go into our resources and comments on this YouTube video and look at COVID-19 updates from the College Board. Keep on top of those. And I suggest anyone who was registered for the June test, register for August immediately. Just because the test was canceled does not mean you're automatically rescheduled. So go online after this meeting and register for August. ACT, the April test was rescheduled for June 13th. Now that is tentative, and I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that change in the next few days. But know that if you were scheduled in April, again, as with the SAT, you get a refund, and it's up to you to reschedule for the new date or for a future date. There's a July date as well. So the summer test, June and July, are currently scheduled. So they have 2 in June as well as a July test. However, again, my feeling for the June test at this stage in the game, because the SAT was canceled, I'm not feeling great about the ACT. So I suggest you be proactive and register for the July ACT or the September ACT if you're not already registered. The TOEFL, this is an at-home test. This is a test that is for students whose it's the test of English as a first language. So it's an English language test for international students. What the Educational Testing Service, who administers this test, has done is converted it to an online at-home test in almost all countries. So here is the website where you can check wherever you are and see how the TOEFL is administered. because if you're an international student and English is not your first language, you do have to take this test for most schools. So AP test, I know these are around the corner, and hopefully most of you are up to date and know that they're now being taken at home on a laptop, a tablet, a phone. I don't know how you'll do it on a phone, but you students are very, very facile on those little keyboards, or via photo submission, which is something that the College Board will give you directions on. It's a new free response format. So whereas there may be some multiple choice questions in a few of the tests, for the most part, it's free response, where you'll have 40 minutes to write responses to questions. And the test will only cover content learned through early March. So even though your AP classes have typically continued virtually, know that the test questions will stop through March, because not all students got back to school quickly. Not all students are even back in school. And the College Board decided that it was only fair to test through March. And just so you know, and I know this has been advertised everywhere, the College Board has extensive measures in place to detect cheating. There is no way to cheat on this test. Well, I'll never say no way, but there is next to no way to cheat on this test and not get caught. So please, please, it's not worth it. And if you're a graduating senior, don't even think about it. So take the test, do the best you can. And that's all that we're asking of you. And that's all that the AP and College Board is asking of you. The College Board is also going to work with colleges to ensure, well, they're not going to be able to ensure, but they're going to ask them to accept the test. Granted, you get the score that the school requires. Some requires 5, some require 4. But because the testing content stops in March, students have said, well, we're not being tested on our whole AP class, so why will colleges count that? Well, it's a valid question. And right now the College Board is working with colleges to get them to accept this. So your AP test is not in vain. The odds are very high that as long as you score what's required by the college will accept your AP test. And again, we have a great link that presents the ever-changing information on these tests. So test optional schools. This is something many of you have heard of happening recently, because one test is being canceled after the next. A lot of schools just said, we can't keep these students on edge waiting to see if they can take a test, if they have time to take a test before they apply. So they've gone test optional. And the University of California system is one. The Oregon State system is another. And then some individual schools have as well. Something to clarify, many of these schools, particularly the University of California system, are only test optional for the 2020-2021 testing season. They will go back to test, we think, next year after this pandemic has passed and is we hope, far behind us. So some of you may say, oh, awesome, no test, it's easier to get in, I'm not a great tester. Well, unfortunately, when a school goes test optional, it's frequently more difficult to get in for a number of reasons. One is more students think, okay, this school was out of my reach because I'm not a great tester, but now that they don't need my test, I have a shot at it. And applications skyrocket. So as soon as a school goes test optional, they see the number of applications they receive go way up, which increases your competition drastically, which means it is not easier to get into a school. They also use holistic evaluations, which they do anyway. However, now your extracurriculars, your demonstrated interest, your essay, your application, your supplemental essays, everything that you've been doing is more important. There's a magnifying glass on that application now that they're not using a test. So please, please make sure that just because a school has gone test optional, you don't assume that it's now easy to get into. And when I say demonstrated interest in this context, many schools will come to visit high schools in the fall If they don't, what they may be doing this year is virtual information sessions. So attending a virtual information session is an example of showing demonstrated interest to a college. And that's something that you can sign up for online. And your school counselor will hopefully be communicating with you. But I suggest that you all sign up for the mailing list on any college that you're interested in applying to, and make sure that you check your email. Don't just sign up and not read the emails. So here's the other thing with test optional. The term is optional. If you have good test scores and you're a strong tester, absolutely submit your scores. There's no question at all that you should submit them, because they will consider them as part of your application. Students who don't have them won't be penalized. However, you may be able to pull up a little bit by showing that you're a very strong tester. So we really encourage students with strong scores to submit them, and we quadruply encourage students to not say, oh, schools are going test optional, so I don't need to test anymore. That is absolutely not true. There are not enough schools going test optional for anyone to make that rash decision. So plan on testing whenever you can. And we have a comprehensive list of test optional schools at the bottom of this page and in the comment section of YouTube. So questions about testing and all the information I've just shared.
Thanks, Julia. We had quite a few questions about testing come in, not surprised there. So one of the first questions that came in was, do schools that move to test optional still give preference to those students that submit SAT and ACT scores, and are more highly selective institutions more likely to take that route of weighting an SAT or an ACT score even though they've moved to test optional, or weighting it higher?
So the first part, are they going to give students who submitted tests sort of an edge? No. They would be disingenuous by saying they're test optional if you submit a test, you're automatically ahead of the game. But what it does is they take the test into consideration when they're looking at your overall application. So if you don't submit a test, you're not behind. However, if you do, you're also not necessarily ahead. The playing field has to be leveled out by the colleges, or they would not go test optional. And Emily, I'm sorry, that was a long question. What was the second part?
Whether highly selective institutions may lean in that same direction.
Well, so far, we've only had a few highly selective institutions go test optional. So I don't think that they will be leaning in that direction. If so, I believe they would have announced it. But again, things are changing constantly. So if you continue to check fairtest.org, you will learn as soon as possible, as soon as it's announced, when schools or if schools go test optional. And also know that test optional means different things at different schools. In some schools, if you're homeschooled, for example, you're not test optional. In some schools, you can take the ACT or the ACT or APs instead of tests. Test optional means different things at different schools. So please look into your school's test optional policies.
Thanks, Julia.
Sure.
Another question we received was, if College Board is pushing back tests, are schools also going to push back deadlines?
So that's a discussion we had right before this meeting. We have not heard anything yet about schools pushing deadlines back. Typically, early action, early decision are November 1st and around between November 1st and November 15th, with a few outliers earlier and later. Nothing has been announced to date that any of that will change. If it does change, trust me, it will be huge news and you will hear about it. But right now, nothing has changed.
All right, thank you. And then we got a few regarding subject tests for the June tests. So confirmation that subject tests in June are also being canceled along with the regular SAT. And then we had a specific question about certain types of tests, subject tests that are only offered a handful of times a year, June being one of those dates, whether it's likely that the College Board will reschedule that test for a sooner date, since the next date to test may say be in December.
Right. So first part of the question, are subject tests canceled? Yes. any component of the testing in June is canceled. Subject tests that are only administered in June and December, it hasn't been confirmed yet because June was just canceled the other day, or yesterday, I believe. My guess is that the College Board will add at least one more administration where they give all of the subject tests, and the language subject tests are given at different dates as well. So trust me, the College Board is going to do everything they can to accommodate students' testing needs. And that will be, I'm sure, adding another set of administrations with the subject test.
Thank you. Do you predict that the June ACT will also be pushed back? Fortune telling.
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I would say yes. It has not. I have to go on record saying it has not yet been pushed back, but it's only a week after the June SAT. So my guess is that that's news we'll hear next week.
Thanks. This is an interesting question. Do you think, in your own personal opinion, that the SAT will follow in the ACT's footsteps and offer single subject retakes?
That's been up for discussion since the ACT made their change, and the College Board has not yet given any hint at all that they'll be going into individual section testing. So my guess is that they're going to remain the same because there are only 2 sections as compared to the ACT that has 4 sections. So my personal opinion is the College Board will not go to separate testing, separate section testing, but don't hold me on that.
Thanks, Julia. All right, that covers most of the testing questions that we've received regarding the current climate. So I think we can move into the next section.
Absolutely. I'm going to have a quick drink of water before we go. Okay, this is a critical section, extracurricular activities and summer plans. So you're all in school. Well, most of you are in school either in a virtual state or not at all because some schools have just been canceled. Know that while, of course, there's an adjustment period where everyone's heads are spinning and they're saying, okay, I'm doing online classes, teachers are trying to figure things out, clubs have all fallen by the wayside, but they don't have to. So even if you're not the leader of a club, if you're just a club member, contact your club president via email and say, hey, can we start having meetings again? Even if competitions have been canceled, Model UN's competition was just canceled. Speech and debate competitions have been canceled, but that doesn't mean you can't still meet as a club in Zoom and still stay current and still have that ongoing commitment and that ongoing brain stimulation, because most of you are in these clubs because you love them. So don't let them fall by the wayside. And you can hold virtual club meetings. And if your club, maybe you're going to change the format a little bit and include presenters. So for Model UN, for example, maybe you don't have a competition to prepare for. So maybe you'll start to ask ambassadors to present online. Who knows? There's so many things. And this is one of those areas that's going to differentiate students on this next application cycle. Those who make the extra effort and go the extra mile to try and bring a club back to life or create new clubs will stand out as compared to students who say, oh, we're not in school, clubs can't meet, oh well. So again, even if you're not an officer in the club, take the initiative to try and get your clubs back and up and going, as long as they're things that you don't clearly have to meet in person. Volunteering is clearly challenging right now, but you can ask any organization that you've been volunteering for in the past if they have any means of you volunteering virtually, and continue to volunteer. One of the areas that many of our students volunteer in is nursing and retirement homes. And as we know, no one's allowed to go in, no one's allowed to leave, because that is such a fragile population with COVID-19. And imagine how lonely these people are. So say you were visiting once a week and like on a Sunday afternoon and you were playing bingo, you can't do that anymore. But try and re-engage via Zoom with the people at the retirement facilities, because they need the stimulation. They miss you. If you're a musician, play a concert. If you're a singer, sing. If you're one-on-one with someone, read them a book. So contact the activities coordinator at the retirement home and say, listen, I was there volunteering. I can't come back, but I would love to work with your residents virtually. How can we do that? And again, that is going to show colleges, not only is it a fantastic thing to do as a human being, but it's going to show colleges that you've taken things to the next level through your own initiative. Another area that you can really show initiative in is starting new activities. Start a book club at school if you don't already have one. If you have one, it's easy to go virtual for a book club. Start sort of a variety show or an open mic night. And, you know, most of you had senior proms canceled. Maybe have a virtual senior prom, and open mic in terms of, you may learn some of your classmates have hidden talents that you were not aware of, and they're willing to do it from home in front of a computer rather than in front of an audience. So another area that really needs help is something I've learned recently, animal fostering, because a lot of the shelters depend on volunteers to come and walk the animals. And right now that's not possible. So many shelters are looking for families to foster animals through this period of time. So that's something to actually look into. If it's something your family, you feel, discuss it with your parents. Please don't have a dog show up at your front door. Discuss it with your parents before you even think about doing this. But it's another area that is you can probably do. Summer activities. Okay. This was an old Schoolhouse Rock image that Emily and I love, closed for the summer. So have a backup plan. Most summer programs have either, and this, I've been doing this research this week, summer programs have, well, there's three things that are happening. They've A, canceled completely. B, as with Georgetown, Duke, a number of schools, taken what was a residential activity and converted it to virtual. And I'm sure the price will come way down because you're no longer paying for room and board. You're no longer paying for travel expenses. And C, some of them, particularly those that are happening later in the summer, have not changed yet and have no notifications. But go on your activities website, and you'll see most of them have banners saying regarding COVID-19. So it may not seem like it's gone virtual, and you may not have received a notification yet, but I'm learning that more and more programs are going virtual, things that you wouldn't think could. Another thing is to create your own summer curriculum. Free or low-cost enrichment classes online. edx.org has classes from top universities in the world. Coursera also has fantastic classes. Say you are into comp sci, learn programming, take intro to comp sci, take how to make mobile apps, create a little mini curriculum that you can take over the summer. They're all archived, they're all work at your own pace, and you can create your own little summer college program, and it will be almost free. Some of these charge a minimum amount so that you can get the homework and some of the activities. However, don't worry about getting a certificate of completion. Colleges don't ask you to prove that you've done this. It's an honor system, and you should be open and honest if you put this on your activity sheet. So I encourage you all to look into these programs. You'll be stunned at what's available. Online summer programs at colleges across the country. As I said, some programs have gone to virtual, and there are also many that have already been virtual that you may just not have been aware of. Something else, students may want to get ahead in high school and get some extra credits, because rigor of curriculum is the #1 thing that colleges look at on students' applications. So if you can sneak a class in over the summer that you don't have room to take or that your school doesn't offer during the school year, absolutely go online and take an online class for credit. Even if your school doesn't give you credit, the college will, because you'll get something from the registrar that's a transcript that shows that you took the class and that it is a 4-credit class. So I have 2 references here. UC Scout is a University of California system that has an excellent cross-section of classes. And CTY is a Center for Talented Youth that's a Johns Hopkins program. Little more, definitely more expensive, more complex, but something worth looking into. And there are a number of other ways to take online classes. Questions about extracurriculars and summer activities? Is Emily going to say no?
No, not at all. Sorry, I was just responding to a question in real time. We definitely have some questions. We've got a lot of questions that have overlapped from previous sections, so we can just kind of dive into questions in general. The first one is about the most recent section. What are some good organizations that students can volunteer at virtually from home, maybe not bringing an animal into the house or having to go somewhere, but that they can do right from the ease of home?
Well, one of the things I mentioned, retirement homes, I think, are ripe for your help. Some of your local food banks may need you to solicit food from vendors online. It is a political season, so many political campaigns can use students to volunteer online, whether it's making phone calls, sending emails, something to consider. And this is an unusual summer in that it is the summer before. I know things have been kind of pushed to the background in terms of the political race, but that's going to come to the forefront pretty quickly. So that's something that will be happening this summer. If you have an internship, or if you had an internship, don't hesitate to contact the organization and say, listen, I know you're not working from the office anymore, but is there any way that I can still continue the internship virtually? So we've included some resources in the YouTube comments that will help you with this. And I'm sorry, I don't have any more specific places for you to contact.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. All right, going back to financial aid, when we talked a little bit about the issues that are arising with financial aid due to the current climate. Mm-hmm. Do need-aware schools look at how much aid a student is asking? I know that's a more general question, but it may just help alleviate some concerns. So can you kind of talk about need-aware schools and how the ask for aid plays into that from an admissions standpoint?
Okay, so first what I'm going to do is define need-aware versus need-blind. Schools that are need-aware for financial aid means that the admissions group knows that students are applying for financial aid. So it shows on their application that they're applying for financial aid. They are need-aware. They're aware of your need for aid. Need-blind, there's sort of a wall between financial aid and admissions, and there is no note anywhere on your application that you are applying for financial aid. So financial aid does not factor into whether they accept you or not. Whereas with need-aware schools, it may ultimately impact your acceptance or not. So the question, my understanding of the question is, will things change with need-aware schools? If you need additional aid, if you've been awarded aid and you need additional aid, absolutely apply. If you haven't applied yet, if you're the class of 2021 and your family's been impacted by COVID-19, absolutely apply, need-aware or not. If you don't apply and you can't pay for the college, if you don't apply for aid and you can't pay for the college, what's the sense in even applying to the college? So please don't hesitate. If your family needs the financial aid, apply for it, need-aware or not. Did that answer that question, Emily?
I think so. I think that was great.
Hope so.
How do you think that admissions rates will go up based on the current climate?
Oh, that's a huge question. I don't think admissions rates will go up. I think some students may opt to defer the this coming year. They may check in with schools, may be uncomfortable leaving home right now, or not right now, but leaving home in 3 months, and may opt to defer for a year. But the only place where I can potentially see admission rates being impacted would be some of the real epicenters of the pandemic. Students may be less inclined to apply to some of those schools, but that's just me, sharing my thoughts. I have no evidence to support that.
Thanks, Julia. Do you think test centers will all have to open nationwide for the August test date, or state by state? Do you think that basically are we going to see more testing centers for August?
I believe that the College Board, assuming the August test happens, it is my understanding that the College Board will be looking for more test centers, because it is going to be, there will be a tidal wave of students. The students who couldn't take the April test, the May test, the June test, guess what? They're all going to take the August test. So I think the number of students who want to take the August test will double. And the College Board knows they have to find additional testing sites and have more seats for that test than they've had in the past.
All right. This is a question that I know we've seen a lot from our own students, this concern, if the SAT and or ACT go online and are taken from home, are they going to be given the same weight as SATs or ACTs previously that were not taken at home or online?
Yes. It would not be fair at all for colleges. It's the same as people have asked with APs. Is there the same weight for an AP test that you're taking home this year as compared to taking from school last year? Yes, they will give you the same weight. Colleges are not going to discriminate against whether a test was taken at home or at a testing center.
Thank you. We've gotten a couple questions regarding the movement to pass-fail or credit-no credit courses for current high school students. So the first question is, are colleges going to be more lenient with GPA and grades because some schools are now credit or no credit or pass-fail?
So colleges will still have your first semester, assuming we're talking about the class of 2021, they will still have your first semester junior year grades to look at. So there will still be grades in the mix. And even if the second semester is pass-fail, some schools are still giving students number grades, but passing or failing them. So they'll still be able to calculate a GPA. For students from the class of 2021, if you've shifted to pass-fail, colleges that have accepted you at this point will not rescind acceptance because you've gone to pass-fail. It's completely out of your control. So the pass-fail, you won't be penalized for pass-fail, but don't skate by and think, oh, no one's going to know what my real grade could have been. So as long as I get above a C or a D, not that you would, but as long as I, skate by, I'll be okay. Still do your best in the class and assume that it is possible that the pass-fail class will still be given a numeric grade somewhere in your transcript.
Thank you. All right. A slightly related question. If a student was given the opportunity by their school to take a class pass-fail and therefore potentially have a higher GPA or get actual grading so that colleges can see kind of broken down what they're making in classes, but that could potentially result in a lower GPA, what would you recommend, which direction to go in?
I would always recommend taking the class for a grade. I think that shows the work that you're doing. It shows that you're diligent. And if a college sees that your high school gave you the option of pass-fail or getting a grade and you opt for pass-fail, it's a bit of a red flag. So I would always go for the grade.
Awesome. Jumping back to volunteering and being involved right now, the student is wondering, can they contact organizations proactively right now, even if they haven't applied there before the whole climate change? So can they reach out to organizations now?
Absolutely, you should. I think there are so many organizations online that you wouldn't, I think that students' thought process is going to start to change now, because you're going to think more about organizations that are larger, that are maybe associations or different things, and you can absolutely approach them online. It doesn't matter that you've had no previous contact with them at all. Many students are starting from scratch at this point for summer, so don't hesitate. The more the merrier, and know that you need to apply to more than one summer program or reach out to more than one organization. You should have at least 2 or 3 as backups.
Thanks, Julia. And then we've got a question about colleges. I'm assuming for the class of 2020 or potentially some older students that are currently in school. Do you think that colleges are going to open in the fall, or are they going to be online?
I don't think they're going to be online. Some schools have already pushed their fall semester. Boston University recently pushed its fall semester to spring because its summer semester is being held in the fall, if that makes sense. So incoming freshmen will not start until the spring. I think this is something we may see happen. So students need to prepare. When I say have backup plans, we're in such a state of flux with the pandemic and states opening, states not opening. Schools are in the same state of flux. So I think best case scenario, you can go to school as planned. Second option, maybe they push you back to start in the spring. So after what would be considered winter break, and you start as a freshman in January. Worst case scenario is they cancel your freshman year and you take a gap year, which some students may want to start looking into. I don't want you to panic, because I'm not saying that schools are going to do this. I'm saying, again, have a plan. Consider, okay, if my school doesn't, because who knows when they're going to make up their minds about this. If my school decides not to hold classes for the fall, what am I going to do all fall? So look into gap year programs, and they don't have to be official gap year programs. You can come up, you can work, you can take online classes. There are so many things that you can do. Any of the things that we've discussed in terms of extracurriculars can be done. So this is something it's an evolutionary process, and schools are announcing this news on a daily basis.
Thank you. These are not quite related to, this question isn't quite related to the current climate, but I think it's a good one just in general to answer. How do colleges equate GPAs from students from different high schools? Do they look more at an unweighted GPA because different systems or different schools weight GPAs differently?
So again, as I said earlier, the number one thing that colleges look at is the rigor of a student's curriculum. They want to see that students are pushing themselves to take the most challenging classes that their school offers. Now, notice I said that their school offers, because I have some students whose schools offer 2 AP classes and other students whose schools offer 20 AP classes. So clearly it's not apples and apples. And colleges know this. They either know through the school profile, they're familiar with the school, or this is something students put on their application and say, my school offers a limited number of APs, therefore I've been restricted to only, or they restrict the number that students take. I've been restricted to taking 2 APs a year when I would have rather taken 5. So do they look at weighted versus unweighted? Unweighted always has a lot of value in terms of a GPA, because it shows your true grade in the class. The benefit of the weighted GPA is it shows the rigor. So getting a B in an AP class versus an A in a traditional class, I would say the two are pretty close to the same, although I would prefer to see you get an A in the AP class. Did that answer that question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
One more question for right now. If a student increases their GPA significantly during a period where they're going to online classes, is that going to raise a red flag for colleges?
So if your GPA increases significantly, will it raise a red flag for colleges? I don't think so. And is the backstory or the reason for this, do you mean will colleges assume that you're cheating on your homework or cheating from home? If that's the case, if there's a huge jump in a GPA, it will raise a red flag. If there's a slight increase in a GPA, it may mean that you're just less distracted, that you're home and you have nothing else to do and you're doing better in the class because you're more focused. But if there's a huge increase in a GPA, yes, that will raise a red flag. And again, that's my opinion. So don't hold me to that, but that's what I feel that I would look at as a college admissions person.
Thanks, Julia. All right. We have another question that's related to a question I already asked, but maybe a little further clarification or insight might be helpful. Do colleges take into account the difficulty of a high school? I know we talked about weighted GPAs between high schools, but as stats are skewed, and some high schools may be more rigorous than others, what does that mean to the admissions process?
So admissions officers know the schools. They know the schools that are extremely rigorous. They visit the schools that are extremely rigorous. So, and your high school profile, which is something that your counselor sends to colleges, it tells them your grading system. It tells them how many APs are offered. It tells them where students who have graduated from your high school have gone to college. All of that alludes to rigor. So, first of all, most schools have admissions counselors that are aware of the most rigorous high schools in the country. And they will take that into account because they know that an A at that school may be much, much harder to earn than an A at a less rigorous school. And B, the profile will definitely clarify that as well if you're not as well known or if you're a less rigorous high school. So make sure, by the way, a note to really ask your college counselor, make sure your school has a profile. Most schools do. They're very, very helpful. And that typically is sent with your transcript when you apply to college.
Thanks, Julia. All right. Looks like that's all of the questions that have come in so far. I think we got to all of them, hopefully.
Okay.
I want to quickly address if any of you all are looking for help with the college process. We do offer some college admissions counseling programs at the Princeton Review. Julia Moody is one of our counselors that you could work with. We've got a host of different programs for different grade levels, different price points, so I won't dig into too much detail there. You can go check out our website. We do have the option to schedule a free consultation online to talk through some of the issues you might be having, concerns you have, and what programs might be a best fit. So feel free to give that number a call or set up a consultation. And also, we just wanted to say thank you for attending today. We really loved getting to chat with you guys and answer questions. And hopefully we were able to ease some concerns about the current climate and admissions. And thank you to Julia.
Well, thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone who's taken the time to attend this. We know how valuable your time is. And I hope that we've shared some valuable information with you. But again, check back if you have any questions. I will be checking the YouTube comments regularly. So if you think of a question that you'd like to add to the comments, feel free to add it. If I don't get back to you, if I don't respond immediately, I'll respond within a couple days. Okay, so this is goodbye, but not forever. How's that?
Sounds
Thank
great.
you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.